Fred! What the blazes have you done? You marked every naughty child as nice. Are you out of your mind?
None of the kids seem naughty to me, Nick.
Good grief, Fred. You really never see the ramifications of anything, do you? We literally cannot make enough presents with only 3 days left. We cannot deliver all of those presents. Do you see? It's over. Congratulations, Fred. You've caused Christmas for the whole planet. Everybody. Lithuania. Everywhere in Africa. The whole thing. Pfft, right down the crapper.
Blame it all on me, right? It's all my fault. How convenient for you.
And that was right about you. Mom was right about you.
You know what? Save it, Nick. Maybe you should look at your own self for a change.
Oh?
You just keep stuffing your face with gingerbread, fat boy.
Talking, fat talking, punk! You know I've been battling a weight problem for years, Fred. That is not funny.
You know what? You can shove it, Thunder Thighs. I'm sick of it. This little tree's gonna get some light, Nick. This little tree's gonna chop that big tree down.
I'll have to take your abuse.
Nick, I couldn't miss you by trying. I couldn't miss you by trying. You're so fat.
You throw like a girl.
Yeah.
Like a big leather jacket wearing girl.
Come on, fat boy.
All right, everyone. Welcome to Brandon at Random Reviews. I am your host, Brandon Griffiths. Thank you for stopping by. I do appreciate it. If you like listening to a guy talk about one unsystematically chosen movie at a time in weekly episodes, then look no further. To keep up with the newest content, you can find Brandon at Random Reviews on most major video and audio platforms, as well as popular social media sites. If you enjoy this, please like and subscribe. If I hit 10 million subscribers, YouTube will give me a sweet bike with a banana seat and awesome streamers on the handlebars. Today's movie is Claus, released on November 9th, 2007, based on the critically acclaimed novel of the same name written by renowned author. I'm fucking with you. No, this is not based on anything. This is Claus. Directed by David Dobkin, written by Dan Fogelman, who did the story and the screenplay, and Jesse Nelson, who also worked on the story. For the producers, we have Joel Silver, Jesse Nelson, and David Dobkin. For the score, we have composer Christoph Beck. And for the cast, we have Vince Vaughn, who plays Claus. And he was in Swingers. That was like his breakout role. Great movie, really funny. Also pretty grounded in reality and has a lot of good performances in it. And I don't think it gets credit for that. And he was also in Old School with Will Ferrell and Luke Wilson. And that was like a smash hit. It really hit all the right notes with its target demographic. And everybody I knew was referencing that movie and fucking loved it. And he was also in Wedding Crashers, which is another good one. It's got Owen Wilson, Rachel McAdams, and Isla Fisher, among others. Then we have Paul Giamatti, who plays Nick, aka Santa. And he was in Sideways, and chances are pretty good you didn't see this, but I think it was late last year in season 1 of this podcast. I actually did like a short video episode, like a couple of video episodes that were like a few minutes long. I was still kind of feeling out the whole video thing, but the first one I did was on Sideways, and I fucking love that movie, and I love him in it so much. Kathy Bates plays Mother Claus, and she was in the movie Misery, and that's definitely a future episode. I'd like to do it this season. I'm trying to kind of target somewhere in the winter months because, that would only make sense for that movie. Then we have Rachel Weisz, who I have noted here is hot, and she plays Wanda Blinkowski, and she was in the movie The Mummy from 1999 with Brendan Fraser. Then we have Elizabeth Banks, who I also have noted here is hot, and she plays Charlene, and she was in a bunch of movies that I've liked over the years, but she was in the movie Wet Hot American Summer, and that one is like a cult classic. It's really funny. It's got a ton of people in it, and some of them were before they were stars, and some were that maybe they had already been stars and things like that, but it's a pretty stacked cast. Then we have Kevin Spacey, who plays Clyde Archibald Northcutt, and Kevin Spacey has been in movies and TV shows. For casting notes, Rachel Weisz Elizabeth Banks and John Michael Higgins were the only choices for their respective roles. Robert Downey Jr. said in an interview with Vanity Fair that he wanted to be in this film. However, IMDb casts significant doubt on the potential seriousness of this comment. Reese Witherspoon, Naomi Watts, Nicole Kidman, Brittany Murphy, and Renee Zellweger were considered to play Annette Claus, so Mrs. Claus. Jamie Lee Curtis, Jane Seymour, Fergie, and Judy Greer were considered to play Mother Claus. For the plot synopsis, Santa and his estranged brother attempt to reconcile as they must work to save the North Pole from being shut down by an efficiency expert. For the tagline, everybody has that one relative who can't help but cause problems over the holidays. Even Santa. Alright guys, let's just dive right into the plot of this fucking movie. So this movie starts off with some voiceover narration that is deliberately made to sound like it fits a more serious story. Kathy Bates is giving birth, and when the baby is born, they name it Nicholas, and the father invites his older brother Fred to meet him. I guess this is supposed to be like the Middle Ages or some shit because the Claus family is immortal. It's like in this weird old house in the middle of the woods, and it just looks like that kind of time period. It seems that although Fred initially loves Nick, I guess he gets kind of frustrated by how kind and selfless Nick can be, and the mother suggests that Fred try and be more like Nick. Nick literally cuts down the tree that Fred loves while Fred is sitting in one of its high branches, so Nick can bring it inside for Fred and put presents under it, which would be a complete lunatic move for an adult, but whatever, he's like a young kid. And also, I guess he killed Fred's bird friend Chirp Chirp, or at least destroyed Chirp Chirp's birdhouse. I don't know. It's the first time through I was thinking it wasn't going to be that relevant, but I guess it really is. So suddenly we see a bitter, grown-up Fred who is hassling some young girl because he's repoing a bunch of her family's stuff. It's pretty clear that he's just a frustrated and angry middle-aged man who is pissy, especially around Christmas stuff. He encounters a woman who I guess is his romantic interest named Wanda, like she's his girlfriend, I guess. And she's frustrated that he forgot her birthday, so he looks at some billboard in the distance and it's like right fucking there and makes up some bullshit about surprising her with a trip to the advertised restaurant on the billboard. And it's like, it's not really funny, but whatever. Back at Fred's apartment, he's hanging out with some orphan kid named Slam. His real name is Samuel, and going through why he hates Christmas and Santa, but the kid doesn't really want to hear it. And then Fred heads down to establish that he's also got money issues with what I guess is his landlord for maybe a small business that he has, and he's told that he has to have $50,000 by the 22nd of December. Fred decides to become an impromptu Salvation Army Santa, but I'm assuming it was intended for him to just use the donated money for his own purposes, and after a confrontation from the other Salvation Army Santas and a subsequent chase, he gets arrested and thrown in jail. Meanwhile, we get a glimpse of Nick, aka Santa, and Mrs. Claus, and I gotta say, as much as I adore the great Paul Giamatti in so many things, he was such a fucking weird choice to play Santa. Even in this, like, it's kind of a weird movie, it's kind of deliberately stupid, but like, wow. Fred calls to get Nick's help with his money woes, and despite only initially mentioning a need for $5,000 in bail, Fred eventually reveals that he also needs $50,000 to cover his other debts. Nick was initially okay with the $5,000, but when the $50,000 was revealed, he insisted that Fred would have to come to the North Pole and help out there in exchange. Wanda is of course furious with Fred as he explains to her what he has to do, especially considering that he had previously told her that he didn't even have any siblings. The boy that Fred has, I guess, been taking care of, named Slam, I was trying to think, like, is that the kid in Role Models? And yes, it is the kid from Role Models. That's why I know him. CPS actually comes to remove Slam from this unfit home that Fred has set up for Slam. And it's like, okay, like, another problem here. Okay. Then suddenly some elves arrive in Santa's sleigh to pick up Fred, and man, that sleigh ride features some choppy ass fucking visual effects. And the elves are led by this elf named Willie. The North Pole seems like it kind of lacks imagination in its design when they arrive. It looks like a generic North Pole. It doesn't look like they really did anything interesting with it. Fred meets Charlene, who is an exceptionally good looking elf who is just normal human size for some reason. Willie is clearly into her, but is crushed when she can't remember his name. Been there, bro. But also, it's Elizabeth Banks. Like, don't set unreasonable expectations with yourself, John Michael Higgins. I mean, you're not gonna land Elizabeth Banks. So, as I mentioned, John Michael Higgins plays this main elf, Willie, and I didn't recognize him by name, but he's definitely in a lot of stuff, including the all business lawyer Wayne Jarvis from Arrested Development. There's something unpleasant about the visual effects used to make the actors playing elves look small. It just looks fucking weird. Like, you can't tell what it is they did to make them look smaller. You just know that something goofy is going on with what you're looking at. We also get a brief role from rapper Ludacris, who plays an elf named DJ Donnie. Suddenly, Kevin Spacey, who has in no way cast an unpleasant shadow over all of his films, plays Clyde Northcutt, who is like an efficiency expert and tells the Clauses that given recent trends, they are considering shutting down North Pole operations if things don't change. Fred looks into a portal and catches a glimpse of Wanda back at home being asked out by a man on the street, and she initially declines but then proceeds to agree to a date. And Fred's like, well, if it isn't the consequences of my own actions. Then Fred gets fed up with the endless Christmas music and has an altercation with DJ Donnie and puts on regular music, and we get an objectively cringy scene where Fred leads a dance number in front of a crowd of elves. Northcutt spells out his company's 3 strikes policy just before him and the Clauses walk in on the elf dance-off. Paul Giamatti rarely tries to be cheerful in this movie like you would think Santa would be, but when he does, he acts like he's got a gun to his back and he's being forced to do it. Nick reveals to Fred that their parents are going to be at the dinner that Fred agreed to attend, and he tries to bail last minute, but Northcutt also surprises everyone with his presence. I don't know. Does he just have free reign to do whatever he wants? I don't know. So Fred hasn't spoken to or spent time with his parents in years, and they clearly resent the fact that he hasn't been the great son that Nick has. And naturally, Fred is super welcoming to this constructive criticism. So Fred bails out on dinner in frustration and hits the bar with Willie, and Willie is still pining over Charlene, who still can't remember his name. So Fred decides to try and get Willie's confidence up to win her over, but it kind of blows up in his face, and Willie gets really frustrated and mad at Fred, so it doesn't go well. It's funny, Vince Vaughn was so great. He hit it big with Swingers early on, and then later on he was in a bunch of hits like Old School and Wedding Crashers, and I can't really be sure what happened, but he really just lost his appeal for a lot of people out of nowhere, I guess. And I mean, he started to play the same character more or less, like the funny, irritable, short-fused guy that kind of is angry with people, but it seemed like it just wore out its welcome, and it didn't seem like he was playing many other roles. Northcutt really hammers home what an evil guy he is by shredding a bunch of letters to Santa and causes a panic because they have no backups for the hard copies, and Fred is looked at as potentially being at fault. So these goofy Secret Service elves come and bind Fred up in packaging material to bring him to the Clauses. And it's like he gets there and it's supposed to be an intervention for Fred to turn things around for him, but he's pissed at Nick for the way he sent these guys to go take him in this way and wrap him up like that. And it's it's not really a funny bit and it doesn't really do anything. I don't really understand the point of it. There are bits in this movie that are, I guess, supposed to be seen as funny, but holy shit, so many of them fall flat. There's almost nothing even remotely funny in this movie. Fred and Wanda argue at the intervention, and Fred reveals that he knows about the guy who asked her out, and she doesn't like the invasion of privacy with that. And then outside, Northcutt tries to appeal to Fred's insecurities as he's leaving, and despite initially resisting, it seems like maybe Northcutt struck the right chords with Fred, and it's not clear how long it will be until Fred turns evil too. It turns out Slam hit number 1 on the naughty list, and Fred decides to falsify some documents by marking all the naughty kids nice and frustrating Nick since they can't make their deadlines with so many more presents to deliver. Also, we see Slam become naughty because he essentially repeats the same shit Fred was always saying about Santa and Christmas at the beginning of the movie. And it's like, is the naughty list really just a measure of how heavily kids perpetuate negative perceptions of Santa? He's the worst there is, this Slam kid, really? Not like serial killer kids mutilating animals and shit, like he's number 1. Anywho, after Fred and Nick angrily snowball fight each other, Fred is getting ready to leave because it's the end of his agreed upon timeline, but still makes Mrs. Claus give him the money he is owed before he heads home. Northcutt officially terminates North Pole operations, and Fred opens his gift from Nick, and it's a replica of the birdhouse Chirp Chirp lived in when they were kids. See, like, that comes back and you're just like, that's not, like, I don't feel like that's a payoff for anything. Like, I wasn't waiting for, like, oh, when are we going to find out about what Nick's going to do to make amends for what he did with Chirp Chirp? So anyway, Fred goes to a celebrity sibling support group, and of course, Frank Stallone, Roger Clinton Jr., and Stephen Baldwin don't buy that he's really Santa's brother, and I don't really know what the point of this scene, like, I guess it's supposed to be funny. It's terrible. But, you know, on the bright side, I didn't know what Frank Stallone actually looked like before. So, you know, there's that. Fred travels back to the North Pole and rallies the elves to make a toy for every child, and to make production feasible, they decide to make a baseball bat for every boy and a hula hoop for every girl. They tell Fred that those items aren't necessarily what all the kids wanted, but he argues that it's more important that kids get something than nothing at all. But honestly, if I got a baseball bat, I'd just assume that a mistake had been made. Like, I wouldn't be like, oh gosh, I mean, sure, whatever you can handle getting me, you know, I'd appreciate it. No, it's like I would think, oh God, this is clearly for somebody else. Like, where's my gift? So Nick is in bad shape for some reason. He's like bedridden, and I think they say it's like got to do with him being overweight. I just feel like there are so fucking many threads in this movie of like, oh, we've got this problem and this problem and that problem. You know, it's just like like you don't end up caring about any of it. So Fred can't get Nick out of bed to help with the toys, and when Fred asks Willie the elf if Willie could drive the sleigh, Willie says that he can't. Only a Claus can drive it. And it's like, ooh, subtle foreshadowing. So Fred's gonna deliver the shittiest haul of Christmas gifts since the Three Wise Men instead of Nick for Christmas. They kind of run through Fred distributing the gifts with a montage, but I can't stress how bad this movie needed to be a half hour shorter at the very least. Fred delivers a puppy to Slam because I guess he's better than all the baseball bat and hula hoop kids, and gives him a little pep talk. Northcutt comes and shuts down the workshop, including some significant resources for Fred and Willie to navigate the sleigh. Giamatti has never in any way during this movie even come close to evoking Santa Claus, especially as he confronts Northcutt about having been on the naughty list as a kid, revealing our villain's motivations, I guess. Nick gives him the Superman cape that he always wanted as a kid, and he's so overwhelmed with joy that suddenly he's a full-on good guy now, and that's just that. Like, as a character, of course, not the actor that plays him, just to be clear. So Fred is racing to deliver presents as quickly as he can to beat the sunrise, and Fred and Willie return, and Willie just kisses Charlene right there on the face, and it's clear that they fuck almost immediately after this. They show all these kids opening their generic gifts in pure joy, and I'm just not buying it for one fucking second. Fred stops at Wanda's to give her a gift, and she's annoyed, and he announces that he's just moving into her place, no questions asked. and she just loves whatever bullshit French teddy bear he got her. Like, I struggle because it's like I check out and I don't pick up on details, especially if I know a movie's shitty. It's just, I'm not going to remember everything. And they go to France, and luckily it was a short lived sequence because I was starting to get pretty fucking nauseous. So Fred went on to be a warm and wonderful human being and reconciled with Nick and started spending time with him and the family again. I wonder how painfully aware all of the actors were that this movie was shit and how quickly that realization set in. Like, was it basically as soon as they saw the script, or did it take like shooting the first scene that they were in? I mean, it has to be like a cash grab kind of thing. Like, they knew they were going to get some decent money. So we roll credits and praise for this movie. This movie included some pretty respectable sentence structure and grammar, from what I could tell. For criticism, the story felt like it was very lazily thrown together and was not at all creative, and they just kept piling it on with different issues, and they all felt meaningless. Despite an immensely talented cast, this really felt like it was not something anyone's heart was really being put into. The visual effects were as bad or worse than The Santa Claus, which was released in 1994, and I even mentioned how shitty those effects were, but these are like on par with that 13 years later. So the whole thing with making the generic gifts for the kids also was fucking stupid. Like, just giving them all a bat or a hula hoop, it's like, why? You know, like, it's not satisfying in any way. Okay, so a couple of trivia items. Levi Strauss made custom jeans for Vince Vaughn to wear in this film. I find that so bizarre. Like, I'm pretty sure Vince Vaughn's pretty tall, but it's like, you can't find jeans? Like, why do you need custom jeans? And then behind Santa's workshop was the set of Tim Burton's Batman from 1989. And that's just a fun little tidbit for yours truly. I don't really care if you find that interesting. So I haven't had any IMDb nuggets, as I call them, in quite a long while. These are essentially just like really dumb IMDb trivia items that don't make any sense. Like, they're really vague or uninteresting, or they clearly like don't seem like they'd be verifiable at all. So the first one I have is a good amount of Vince Vaughn's dialogue is improvised. What the fuck does that mean? A good amount? What's a good amount to you? That's like the most subjective term. And on top of that, even if I don't know how much of it is, there is nothing in this movie that Vince Vaughn should be proud of that he ad-libbed at all. And then the other one was Vince Vaughn did some of his own stunts. Some of his own, like, okay, want to name any of the stunts that he did? I mean, were they just the easy ones that it's kind of like they would have rather had somebody, come in as a stuntman and cover for him? I don't know. All right, so on to info and ratings. We have a runtime of 116 minutes. This movie was rated PG by the Motion Picture Association of America. Budget, $100 million. And God, this movie, you can tell that, they spent money on it for sure. But, a lot of that, I would think, is probably actor salaries. I don't know how much, but a decent amount, I would think. Opening weekend, $18.5 million. Worldwide gross, $97.8 million. IMDb rating, 5.7. Letterboxd rating, 2.5. Rotten Tomato critics score, 21%. Rotten Tomato audience score, 45%. Personal rating, 1 out of 5 stars. I've seen this one in the past, and I couldn't remember a single detail of it. It was so fucking bad the first time around that I blocked it out of my memory. It's so fucking bad. And it's one of those movies that you see the poster for it, or you see an ad for it, and you just know what it's going to be, and you know what the quality level will be at. There was no hope for this movie. It was just not good. So that's the show for today. I appreciate you tuning in. I really would love it if you could like and subscribe or follow or whatever it is that you want to do. It would just really help me out lots. Thanks for watching. Have a good rest of your day. Bye now.
Go ahead. Would you like to take a turn now?
My name is Fred Claus.
Hi, Fred.
I'm Santa Claus's brother, and I got a lot of stuff going on because of it. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of juice in the tank over it, And
Is this a joke to you? Stephen, by the way.
Nice, Stephen.
Hey guys, what's up? I mean, because this isn't funny to all of us here in the group. This is very serious to us. And I'm feeling very uncomfortable with where you're coming from.
Stephen, maybe to him, his brother is Santa Claus.
I feel like my brother's Santa Claus.
yeah, but I feel like my brother's Santa Claus because my brother really is Santa Claus.
All right, that's enough, all right? You and I got a problem.
All right, Stephen, easy, all right. Stephen, easy. That's not Alec, okay? Don't look at me, look at him. That's not Alec.
That's not Alec.
Come on, Alec. You know what I mean? It's like,
All right, let's dump it out.
It's not Alec.
Stephen, Alec's not gonna hear that.
how's he gonna?
That's not Alec.
Okay, that's not Alec.
That's not Alec.
That's not Alec.
That's not Alec.
All right. Now that you've got Alec's attention, Stephen, what do you want to tell him?
Stephen, I think I know where you're coming from. Because I used to be really, really angry with my brother. I didn't want to become first brother, especially for the rest of my life. I couldn't control that. I couldn't control being brother of the President of the United States. But I could control being Bill Clinton's brother. And I made the decision, even though I could have brought the house down, I made the decision that for the love of my brother and for the love of my family name, that I was going to do whatever it took